way we're going to decide a little casually. Tom and I have just kind of met, and what, your involvement in this area, and say a few words, because the other three, which include me, have had a chance to.
Yeah, I only need 30 minutes or so to do that.
Have fun.
I'm Tom Creep. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Benchmark Senior Living. We're based in Wellesley, and we have own and operate 50 senior living communities of slightly different sizes and shapes in New England. We're the largest senior living company in New England, so we're in the market in a different way. And our assets in total are a little less than $2 billion, $400 million in revenue, is 5,000 employees, so we're small compared to these folks, but in our space, we're a leader in New England. It's nice to be here.
Very glad to have you here, and actually I'm glad that you're here, because where was the gentleman who was saying there's already a whole industry that's been around, lots of industries been around serving, and some of you also acknowledged, Joe, you said as well, this market. And Tom would be an example of the system that already exists here. Where are you? Who asked me to say that? Ah, yes, did you? Here we have someone who's a...
I was just wondering why in the earlier session, and maybe I missed some comments related to it, you didn't talk much about the existing industry structure, the various players who are in that market today, and how that will segment over time. There's a whole set of incentives that gear the economics of each of those, that drive people into them. You've got people who are going to run out of money, and clearly home health care, home is going to be the only place where those people are going to be. But I mean, there's a whole network of existing institutions that relate in one way or another to each other, because there are some flows to that system. For example, home health care, some people move out of homes into assisted living vehicles. There's then the role that nursing homes play in this system, the role that hospices play in this system, the role that segments of hospitals that deal particularly with older people play in the system and move it back and forth. And then the whole set of both insurance companies and government programs that tend to drive the flow of money through that system. One of the things we've been trying to innovate around that to better understand that system and how it works.
And I would assume that Tom and probably Jody, and all of you to some extent, but I would maybe have some insight into that. So I don't know if you want to comment just to that observation,
sure.
or even...
You're absolutely right. They're enormous industries that have existed for many years. And unfortunately, the way they came about and the way they work is pretty screwed up. So I actually think it's refreshing to come to a conference which doesn't dwell a lot on how it is organized, but looks to new innovations and new ideas, because I think there are not a lot of people who would say that if we were to design a system of long-term care to include senior living, nursing homes, home health, and hospice from a blank piece of paper, that it would look much like what we have today. So from those, I go to conferences all the time to discuss that. It was actually a breath of fresh air to hear other perspectives and try and think about what it ought to be like, because I don't think a lot of the folks, the baby boom generation, would opt to live in the options as we sort of understand them to be today. And I think that's a great opportunity.
Yeah, so you see that as an opportunity. Are you, as an organization, already responding to this opportunity and the positive, it's not a blank piece of paper, but do you do some work that really relates to trying to go back and do it a different way?
Yeah, we sure try. We're looking hard at, I'm not sure, is James here? I was just checking at market segments because not a lot of people, the way the system is set up now is when people think of a nursing home or an assisted living community, they assume they're all sort of generically the same, and actually in most customers' minds there really isn't a meaningful difference from one to the other than which is located where. In fact, that's not the case at all. We're not serving a homogeneous market. There are tremendous differences within segments of the market. Our industry is very unsophisticated in thinking about that. As one example, I think the payer sources that you mentioned, the whole nursing home industry was born out of the creation of Medicaid and Medicare, and it's paid for substantially by Medicaid and Medicare. And again, I don't think there are many defenders of how that is structured and organized, and the incentives that it creates that are not consistent with what a lot of people are looking for. But I think the notion of, I think all of us, speaking for myself, those of us in the industry today know that the stigma and perception of senior living or long-term care will not be acceptable to future generations. To think of it as sort of the old folks home or heaven's waiting room or any number of cliches that you probably heard, to have it be more integrated, so it's not so siloed, to have it be integrated both in the community as well as from a service perspective. I think what healthcare reform is going to do more broadly will certainly have an impact on senior housing and long-term care. So I think the more people in the industry, actually I think one of the big opportunities is for the disruptor sort of phenomenon, because our industry is not necessarily the hallmark of, has not necessarily been the hallmark of creativity and innovation, and that therefore I think leaves us subject to somebody with a whole different way of thinking about it coming in and disrupting things, and I think that would be great for the customer.
Yeah, let me just add one thing there. I think it's helpful to think in an innovative mindset where you design for bursts of evolution in these spaces. The home of the future is not the home of today. It is not how each of you think about the place you go at the end of the day. We have a company that's partnered with Livewell, the Duchossois Group, which specializes in intelligent systems. In fact, this whole room is probably a product of their output. Garage door openers, entertainment systems, super control. So you need to think about smart homes, intelligent homes, and how are we going to occupy those spaces. From Procter & Gamble's standpoint, it's critically important for us. All the appliances are going to be integrated. Everything in the home is going to be communicating with everything else, including the owner of the home, and making that a facile environment for them. When you need more milk, your refrigerator is going to tell you that. In fact, it's going to order it for you. And so we need to do frame shift thinking, evolutionary burst thinking, to get us out of this mind space we're kind of stuck in today. Another thing, hospitals. I think you mentioned hospitals. We're doing a lot of partnering with hospitals right now, the bone transplant groups at the University of Cincinnati, the sickle cell anemia clinics that are there, and looking at transitions through life stages. And how do you make that facile for those patients who are moving into different periods of their lives? And do that, again, in a facile kind of way. Not just you go out the door and you come back for your annual recall. How do we positively impact your life, positively change your lifestyle in ways that are enabled? And so I think that's part of the dynamic that's in play here. I spend a lot of time trying to get people out of their current mindsets. Linda was talking about innovation and what really drives transformational or breakthrough innovation. And it's not incrementality. You saw the Boeing video. We've got a couple of other things that we can show you in terms of other projects.
Put this up right now.
Well, maybe we can do it a little later
Okay.
as another question comes. But I just wanted to make that point. We need to really do a frame shift here.
When you talk about the size of the market, whether it's 20% or 25%, wherever that age segment grows to eventually, I mean, are you distinguishing between those people who will actually have the assets to afford this brave new world you're describing? Or what about the rest of them for whom, if government pays for it through Medicare, unlikely, or through Medicaid, even more unlikely, what's going to happen to them? It's a two-tiered society with economic discrimination between those who benefit from all these innovations and those who will be left behind. What are your assumptions, I guess, is my question.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, factually, the numbers that you heard of 15% to 20%, that's the total population. That's not just those who can or can't afford. That's the total. As a personal matter, I think long-term care insurance should be an important part of the future payment system, but we've got a better person come in on that, perhaps.
No, I was just going to bring a little different angle to the discussion. So I think that it's important to think of innovation as new ideas, and that question is important. But what we've tried to do, so we at the Hartford have been the provider for auto and homeowners insurance for AARP members for 30 years. I failed to mention that earlier. And so for us, right, those are pretty standard products that really, regardless of income, you have to be able to afford, and we'll always have to have those products. So what we've tried to do is create innovative product features within the framework of that. So one example of that is, so we know as gerontologists in our center that, you know, as you age, if you're in a car accident, it's going to take you longer to heal. And we also know, speaking to the healthcare system gaps, that there's probably gonna be a lot of things that you're gonna need help with that your medical insurance isn't gonna pay for. So, walking your dog, going to that next doctor's appointment, going shopping, getting together with your friends. If you're laid up, you can't do that. So we recommended, and thankfully our product development went with us, this product feature we've added called Recover Care, which is if you have our auto insurance, you're in an accident, you have access to this benefit to pay for really anything you want that will need you. So that you'll need, to stay well. It benefits the business, so we always have to give a business benefit in order to get people to sign up. Obviously, do you really want someone getting in their car and driving to the doctors if they're not completely well? Of course you don't, because the risk is higher. And we know it benefits on a personal human level, because obviously you have to go on with your life as you're recovering. So I think the concept of innovation in this space is so broad, and it's how do you think about something as boring, right, as auto and home insurance, and try to make it interesting and innovative, and then all the fabulous ideas that, the new work that you're doing and what you described, that really is sort of out of the box.
Part of the freeing exercise here is not framing the problem in the context of a trade-off either. It's A or B. In fact, when you look at the global community that we live in, think of China and developing countries, to be able to be successful in that space and innovate in that space is our challenge as well. It's our responsibility fundamentally. And some of the insights and learnings we have in those developing communities, where you different business models, different social dynamics and structures. I think we may evolve in many ways, in ways that we don't even think of in the developing world context. And so these dichotomies or these trade-offs that you mentioned, they don't exist in some of these other places. But yet they are very successful in care for aging population. In fact, some of their cultural dynamics demand it, right? And so that's why the Live Well Collaborative, I didn't mention this, we have a second center, and it's a joint venture with the government of Singapore, and it's located at Singapore Polytechnic University. And they do innovation across the Pan-Asian space in Geodome as well. And there are some brilliant things coming out of that space for the global members of the Live Well. So we try to frame it not as trade-offs and not as dichotomies, but problem-solution sets that you can draw from different spaces.
I think innovating within the context of affordability is going to continue to be really important, right? So as you think about innovating in this space, it's a hallmark to keep in mind. Now, what we mean by affordability, to your point, is probably going to change over time. In the work that we've done as Clorox, we've learned that even in the caregiving continuum, the priority that you place on buying the most premium products and making sure I'm staying on top of cleaning the machinery 3 or 4 times a day, it's different when you first come home from a hospital and you've been given a new regimen than when you are towards the end of the person you're caring for life, let's say, and say, you know what, I want more time with mom or dad and less time soaking that humidifier for the 4th time this week. And so not only, I think it's going to be important, but I think it's a constantly shifting conversation about what it means. But this market is just going to be tasked with that over time.
For those of you that, I don't know what percentage of P&G's business or Clorox's business focus on this market. So first off, if you could maybe define, the two of you are in businesses where the focus is on this group, although Hartford obviously a little bit complicated, we'll come back to that. But the two of you, I presume, are in businesses where this market has not historically been the market you've been focusing on, right? So what percentage of P&G's business and what percentage of Clorox's business would be whatever age, I don't know how you define that age group really, and what percentage of the business's money is made from this group currently? So there'll be there some sense, so we can get.
So I think maybe we've actually been engaged in trying to meet the needs of this business, either through our home care businesses or our personal care businesses, depends on our products. And so it's been at the forefront of our thinking, especially in home care of late. So I don't have a percentage number that I can give you that would be, I have high confidence or accuracy in, so I'd rather not put that out there. But I do want to reassure you that it is fundamentally part of the way we think across all of our sectors. Obviously, we own healthcare businesses. It's front and center there, always has been and will continue to be. Even as we move into an arena like beauty care, this is a salient part of our beauty care and cosmetics businesses as well. Hair care, color cosmetics, prestige, this is part of that whole arena. And so while you may see some of the marketing kind of slanted towards the 18 to 24-year-old, which is, the hot swinging kind of thing, especially in the beauty care arena, there are elements of that that play directly for the older consumer. I brought a video clip of some of the things we're doing in the Swiffer business, home cleaning business, and you may have seen some of the videos associated with them. But that's a reframing, but it's directly driven to the deep consumer understanding elements that I talked to before. And so the products are being developed for them, but we're using universal design principles, and they delight everyone. You don't have to be a 50-pluser. You can be a 24-year-old and go, oh my God, look at this is amazing. I've just transformed the cleaning experience. And so you'll see those things cascade what I call up and down the life stage change. So it's a great question. And assigning the dollar value or the net outside sales that would represent that person would be a little bit difficult to calculate, but it is fundamentally part of the foundation of how we grow.
So, and I maybe asked more precise than I'm not. Would you like to answer that question?
Sure,
Yes.
my answer is actually kind of similar to his, so it's hard to give a percentage. Clorox has dedicated a cross-functional team, so across our product supply, research and development, to help to try to solve these problems over the last 3 years. So we've made a substantial people investment in putting people's brains on trying to figure out this space from all different angles, trying to figure out the regulatory angles, what the consumer angles, what needs to be true from a retail perspective. I think it would be no surprise to hear that our healthcare business is actually one of our fastest growing businesses in the company. And so as we think about hospital stays getting shorter, more and more outpatient procedures happening, a lot of those hospital-associated infections are coming home. So when we think about making people's environment healthier and safer, we have to start thinking about home health care and caregiving as almost an extension of our healthcare business, bringing some of those principles into the home.
So everyone who's up here is basically you're all in environments that are friendly to this market. Some of you may be actually in businesses that are not so friendly to this market, even though you're here for interest. In fact, this is not a very large segment. It would be a new thing. You're going to have to really be leading change to get your organization to take this market seriously. Or maybe that's not true, otherwise you wouldn't be here. Because you already are in organizations where this is a market that all of you, that your organizations want to address. Is that correct? So we're all in friendly space here. Yours is 3 years old, but it grew out of understanding what was going on. It sounds like P&G's been going on for quite some time. But you feel fundamentally that you're in places where people get that there's money to be made here, and it also obviously these are businesses where you're meeting a larger purpose as well. The social part of this is really coming out in all of your conversations too. Other questions? Yes.
Yes.
Sure.
So
Yes.
on that point, I actually think that's sort of the frame shifting. That I think the notion of thinking about it as a different market has been part of what has been the problem in the past. Is so therefore we create segregated senior living communities or product types. So the idea of universal design applies not just to consumer products, but applies to financial products, applies to living environments. And the notion of, in fact, what the future generations want is not something that's different. They want the same choices that they've had throughout their entire life when they get to be 85 years old, and not have it feel different, not have it feel like they have to go live with a different group of people and are treated differently. So, in fact, that whole frame shifting is, in fact, is exactly the point that you're touching on, that we should stop thinking about it differently.
No. Yes.
And this has been a very interesting evening for me. This is a whole new space, this particular population. My focus has been in healthcare. And, in healthcare we have broadly speaking, a major value problem. We spend an awful lot of money, and the outcomes that we receive, very questionable. And I'm just wondering if it's becoming more incumbent on providers and payers, even purchasers, to demonstrate that their actions and what they're doing is delivering value. And I'm wondering what if these themes are going to be playing in this space more prominently than they are now, and if you are taking these steps to anticipate increased demand for documenting the value of what you're delivering to the market, other than simply market share. You know, part of the way we got into a problem we've gotten into in healthcare more generally is it's been so driven by market share only, prominently. So I'm just wondering if these themes are going to be you guys are anticipating this, if these things are as I say, are you anticipating?
Is your question, are we anticipating what the value proposition?
Yeah, the value needing to document the value proposition.
Sure, I mean, yes.
More than just simply market share. How are you doing that?
Yeah, I think we have, and I've been at the Hartford now for 15 years, and more than ever, there are conversations happening in our marketing department of pulling out some of what our team does from a value proposition perspective and actually getting it integrated into the marketing messaging. I don't know if that's what you're asking. But so this idea of how do we differentiate based on the value we're bringing, but it's a tricky space because like you said, right, if you are in this market segment, we know that you don't want to be targeted that you're in that market segment. So how do you, to speak to Joe's concept about language, how do you provide the right language? It's just sort of like marketing to men or women in a way that you don't want to be marketed specifically, but you do want to know what the value is. So I think it's tricky. I'd be interested in what everybody else thinks, but I know for us, that concept of universal design just has to cut across everything. So our Recover Care product, we found in our market research that younger families wanted it too. Because why not? You're working, you have kids, you're in a car accident, you want someone to be able to pay for those kind of things. So it's a fine line. I don't know that anyone completely figured it out, but it is certainly a big part of the discussion. Want to do it? Yes.
So, to continue on your question about value from a different angle, in the business of delivering care as an institution, some of the oldest, most established companies are nonprofit. And I'd like to ask a question about for-profit versus nonprofit organizations delivering this kind of value. It's kind of unusual. We're in a business where profit and nonprofit organizations compete with each other for services. And there's arguments on both sides, frankly, about how to drive innovation. Because, you'd think capital return on investment productivity would kind of favor a for-profit mentality. On the other hand, one person delivering care to another person, and how to do that efficiently so that both people can be sustainable in that operation and not be too stressed out is a really important issue in delivering healthcare. And so sometimes the for-profit organizations have a bit of a reputation for making a high-stress environment for the caregivers. And the nonprofit organizations have an equal requirement to provide economic sustainability, which is a productivity thing. So it's not necessarily two different worlds, but in many ways, kind of the mission-driven thing and how the organization manages itself has a different mentality. But it's very much about delivering value productively. And I'm interested in what you have to say about that.
Maybe the only one here who actually competes against nonprofits is that the way you're describing it. I think it's a false dichotomy. There are loads of examples of great for-profits that are more innovative and more customer-friendly and better work environments than nonprofits. And similarly, there are a lot of examples of not-for-profits that are more disciplined than all the rest and some for-profits. I think to me it's chocolate and vanilla, and I just think it's a false dichotomy. So I don't agree with the notion that if you're a profit-motivated organization, that means you are less friendly to work for, less innovative. There's too many examples that disprove that notion.
So a nonprofit institution could be as innovative.
Oh, sure. In a nonprofit institution, by the way, the reputation of for-profits that you touched on earlier was maybe as putting pressure on caregivers. The nonprofit's reputation is for not demanding, not having enough expectations, and not expecting enough, and not delivering the care because they don't want to pressure anybody. And so I think there's both sides of the coin here, and both are true. And I think I don't think there's an absolute to be drawn.
I think when someone gets a diagnosis, kind of three things happen. One, you get on Google. Two, you're probably looking on WebMD. And the third thing is you usually end up looking around the nonprofit website of whatever condition you're dealing with, whether it's National Alzheimer's Association, or National Heart Association, Stroke Association, whatever it is. And so I think nonprofits will continue to be a very strong pillar in this space. I don't think they're emotional hold in this market as we think about chronic conditions that people deal with. Like they're going to continue to be important. As we've worked with them, one of the pain points that I hear is, hey, we want to be able to provide turnkey solutions that are actually helpful to caregivers. And they have a lot of information, but how do you make it palatable and in a way that's easy to digest for someone who's coming to National Stroke Association, and how do I know if my parent is having another stroke? Like, what am I looking for? What are the signs? And I think it'll be incumbent upon us, working in for-profit organizations, to help to try to partner with where people are searching, where people are already building their alliances, to provide information at that point of need. So at the Googles, at the WebMDs, at the nonprofits, so that we bring the information to the point of need.
I was just going to reinforce something that Tom was saying. When you look at the senior living space specifically, again, the fact that they compete nonprofit versus for-profit. I have nonprofit senior living clients and for-profit senior living clients. Neither one of them says to me, don't be innovative because I need to put my money with the board, or don't be innovative because I just can't spend money. They both say, be innovative so I can deliver better care more efficiently. Then what they do with the profits is what distinguishes them. But at the end of the day, they're both putting it back into better opportunities for their folks. I can tell you there's some phenomenal innovations coming out of both ends. You mentioned about, the folks who don't have really the opportunities financially, right? So in Chicago, there's Mather. They're a nonprofit. They took a very old idea of a coffee shop. Coffee shop does not sound innovative, but they innovated it and they made it something that was a point of community connection and even more healthcare delivery for the financially less capable within the community. That was totally innovative. They're a nonprofit. I mean, there's just a lot of good stuff happening out there. Tom's company does a lot of it.
What are you all, actually, maybe we can ask each, what are you each most proud of that you've been able to bring to this innovative space? Give some examples. Again, I think we're already saying we're trying to stretch our imaginations here and break frank. What are you most proud of? That you, I mean, not that each of you has to answer it, but that you.
Well, I'll give you some examples from the Live Well client group, right, or the partner corporations there. We've got one partner, Bill Ron, who was involved in a redesign of the hospital gown. You know, that thing that you kind of tie here, it's kind of drafty in the back, right? But did it in a way that allowed for using the fashion design school at UC. The design school there is the top design college in the United States and one of the top in the world. So they use fashion design students to think about that. Use fashion design students to develop medically practical things that would minimize bed sores. So they developed fabrics that were naturally antibacterial. They redesigned the gown to work with the bed, and nurse practitioners were able to verify that. The gown was able to create some dignity because it didn't have some of those drafty spots. And the gown evolved as you were in the hospital. If you were there for a few days, the gown changed. If you were there for 7 days, it changed again if you were there for 14 days. And it had features that allowed you to be functional and places to put your iPhone. And so that was an amazing, amazing experience. for something that has been, 100 years, that damn gown has not changed. Right? Those are daily occurrences for us. As we see the clients, you saw what Boeing did. I can tell you what Boeing is doing with the airframe is as amazing as what you had seen with that just little video that I gave you. You will not believe what's going to happen inside the airframe for the older consumers. But it's going to cascade to everyone's benefit, right? There are examples from City Financial Group was a member for a period of time. We designed some financial service tools that allowed for safety and security so these older consumers wouldn't be ripped off by family or by nefarious people who are trying to do that. And so there are lots of these examples. It's a very rich environment if you stick with some of those principles that we were talking about up front. So I just offer that as a starting point. There are some things going on at Procter & Gamble, and I can't talk about them. Because the SEC would get in trouble. That's what you want to know.
How do you top hospital gowns?
It's only the answer, all of us, but we'll take that one. Having a chronic illness myself, yes.
I'm wondering about the timeframes, because you showed the video about the airport, you were talking about the hospital gown. I mean, I haven't seen the new hospital gown. So, what are some innovations that were done in your organization, maybe that have already come to market, have saturated the market or widespread the market? And, what kind of timeframes are people looking at to roll these types of things out?
So that's a good question, and the answer is slightly different for each of the industry sectors that we play in, right? So typically for a fast-moving consumer goods company, and this is an R&D guy speaking to you, right? 30 years experience doing this. From ideation to in market, what do you want to guess the time is for a traditional P&G business? 5 years. 5 years. You have to scale up and manufacture these things. You have to go through extensive testing. The business proposition has to be rock solid. And so it's typically in that time frame. So the live well isn't quite that old, right? But there are things that are percolating through that. When you think about transportation industry, the Boeing example that I had shared with you, obviously those innovations take a significant period of time to come forward. Some of the things going on in food and nutrition, Mondelez and Kraft were members for a period of time, and there's some really exciting things going on there that you're going to see quite shortly. So keep looking at the Green Giant and things that may play out there. Duchess Swab, redesigning the home environment and some things that can excite consumers. There's some interesting things going on there. But there again, that's the electronics industry. We work with LG Electronics. They do appliances, kitchens, and stuff. Those things have a longer time frame than fast-moving consumer goods. So I've learned a lot about some of these divergent industries.
So
it's a great question.
Fast-moving is 5 years.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
Normatively speaking,
I have
yeah.
to say one of the dilemmas, so as I said, I study innovation, so one of the companies I've had the privilege of studying since 2004 is Pixar. And one thing that we have to always remember, because now computer-generated movies are obviously mainstream, but it took them 20 years to create the first full-length computer-generated movie. So, and when you actually look at